that 23% increase on April 1st, would you see a dramatic decline for food prices across the country?
I don't think one can see price decreasing. That would mean deflation, which is also very bad. What we could see is probably a slightly slower increase in prices, slower than what is anticipated.
Great. And how about housing costs across the country? If on April 1st that increase was paused, would you see a dramatic change in how the affordability measures for housing across the country?
I'm not sure that carbon tax and the price on carbon has a significant impact on housing prices. It's mostly related to supply and demand for housing. So I don't see pausing an increase in the carbon tax as having a significant impact, certainly not a measurable impact on housing prices.
Thank you
very much. Just wanted to clarify some things for Canadians. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Atwin. Mrs. Cusi, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to go back, Monsieur Giroux, following a line of questioning my colleague had around the deficit spending. This year's spending has increased to $493.7 billion, which is an increase of $50.4 billion. You state in your economic outlook that the deficit is projected to resume its downward trajectory if there are no new measures and existing measures sunset. But as I indicated in my first round, this is not consistent with the government's spending patterns. Based on this government's record and the fact that new measures are already being introduced, do you expect this to be accurate? So my colleague had asked you what is the area of spending which is of most concerning to you. Do you believe that the deficit projected to resume its downward trajectory is possible, is accurate based upon your comments?
When we release our economic and fiscal outlook and we project the deficit going forward, it's assuming no new fiscal measures, because that would be very difficult to include potential measures. What would we include and how much new spending or tax measures would we assume to be introduced? So that's why these are status quo based on what we know at the time that we put this one to bed, the economic and fiscal outlook. However, what we have seen in the past is whenever the government tables a budget or a fall statement, the track for spending tends to go upwards, which is a policy choice. So am I certain that the fiscal track we released in the fiscal outlook will be the one that materializes? I don't think it will happen because the government will introduce new measures, which is why governments get elected. But
historically, we'll change that as the Conservative government. But
the government has also indicated that, or the Minister of Finance rather indicated that she wants the deficit in 26-27 to be at most 1% of GDP. And by our estimate, status quo would suggest it will be at 0.8% of GDP. So that suggests there's not that much room for maneuvering in that fiscal year if the government wants to maintain 1%, the deficit at 1% of GDP in 2026-27 without increasing taxes.
Right. And of course, we're looking at the implementation of lofty programs such as the dental program, the proposed pharmacare on which the current government's power hinges, and of course, the failed child care system which they've tried to implement. Going back to my colleague, Mr. Genes's comments about the IT middlemen, we know that there's been a reduction of 49 full-time equivalents in the procurement department at a time when we are trying to eliminate the middlemen due to the incredible bloated costs we see with the Arrive scam scandal. But these 49 positions are a result of these positions not being filled when they become vacant. Is this a trend that's occurring in other departments and agencies as well that you're seeing?
No, so I'm not aware of that particular instance of a reduction in FTEs. But what we've seen over time is that the number of FTEs has in fact increased, and personnel spending has also increased. So there are obviously isolated cases of reductions in FTEs in specific programs or sectors, but overall the size of the public service has consistently increased over time.
Right, and to that point, spending on public service personnel has increased to $67.4 billion, which is up from the $63.3 billion spent last year. Are you aware if that increase is due to staffing levels or to salary increases?
It's a combination of both an increase in the number of FTEs, and last numbers I saw, there was an increase of, I think, 18,000 to 438,000 FTEs in the public service, but also an increase in salary or remuneration costs per FTE. And the last number I saw was 125,000 and a few $100 in personnel costs per employee, per full-time equivalent.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Mr. Kuzmierczak, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much,